All right, hello, good day, class. Today we will be discussing e- we'll be discussing analyzes the arguments used by the writers in manifestos. Okay, that is our first lesson uh, for third monthly examination. So let's just talk about analyzes the arguments used by the writers in manifestos. This is very interesting class. So for the vocabulary list, manifesto, it is a document. Okay, manifesto is a document publicly declaring the position or program of its issuer. It advances a set of ideas, opinions, or views, but it can also lay out a plan of action. While it can address any topic, it most often concerns art, literature, or politics. On the other hand, arguments is a reasons or the reasoning given for against a matter under discussion. It can be in the form of comparing evidence, proof, things like that. Okay, that is argument. So, learning concepts class, reading latest articles such as those that are printed on newspapers and even those that are shown on the television is a must to do thing that you should be concerned of because it helps you to be acquired with what is happening around you. This might give you knowledge on the present societal and political issues, such as the dispute between the government and the leftists, and of course, the updates about the COVID-19 pandemic. It might also give you idea on the updates about the trends in literature and the arts. Also, the official statement of essential individuals in our society must also be given consideration. But how would we know that you are reading the right thing? That's the big question in there. It is where you need to learn about manifesto. Have you ever heard about the manifesto? Okay, so when we say left, it's like a different political views. Okay, so just in case that you don't know what does it mean. All right. So class, when I said manifesto is a document publicly declaring the position or program of its issuer, it advances a set of ideas, opinions, or views, but it can also lay out a plan of action. While it can address any topic, it most often concerns art, literature, politics. So class manifesto are generally written in the name of a group sharing a common perspective, ideology, or purpose rather than in the name of a single individual. So you know what I mean? Manifesto are generally written in the name of a group. Okay? Na nagsishare sila ng the same ideology or purpose. Hindi siya focus on individual. Okay? You got that? So we have like a major categories of manifesto. We have goal and list and rules, and then we have world. That's the major categories of manifesto according to firstpost.com. So major categories of manifesto. What is the goal? A goal can be manifesto when we share it with other people. It is public, it's a declaration, and it's about what one intends to have happen. Remember that. What one intends to have happen. So, ang purpose niyan or ang goal niyan, ang characteristic niyan, ng manifesto na yan is you have to share it with other people. Okay? Next, list and rules. A manifesto containing set of rules for behaving within a specific context of a list of items to be achieved or tasks to be fulfilled. So, list siya ng items to be achieved or tasks to be fulfilled. So, that's why it's list. And then world, this type of manifesto aims to create what? A new world. It cannot or it's not about simple rules. Instead, it presents a vision for the future, a solemn declaration by the constituted authorities of a nation which contains the reason of its public acts towards another. On the declaration of war, a manifesto is usually issued in which the nation declaring war states the reason for so doing. So remember, class, the reason why it's listed as one of the major categories of manifesto. And remembering number three is world. That means we have to create a new world and present a vision for the future. That's the reason why. Okay. So you have to remember, class, if you're going to notice the italic words from the characteristic of the different categories of manifesto, the common thing about them is that a manifesto or the writer of a manifesto aims for a change in state, or in other words, the author is trying to convince the reader to believe the concept that she is trying to convey by giving arguments or logical reasons that will catch the attention of the reader and eventually believing it. Okay. So how are these changes carried out with just the use of written words? Okay, that's a question. So the answer for that is because it is when the author provides reason accompanied with evidences to prove the belief they wanted the reader to believe in, or the so-called arguments. Okay. And another, you have to remember, class, that a statement can only be considered an argument if it presents proof or evidences. However, if it does not, it is only a mere opinion. Okay, so as a reader, the challenge, however, lies on how will you understand the meaning that the author or written wanted you to know. And remember, class, we are, we are freedom to, we have a freedom for, I mean, we have a freedom to express ourselves. We have a freedom of speech, right? So you have to be careful what you read, especially in social media. Just want to make sure that you know what's the difference between argument and what is difference between opinion. Okay. So remember, class, that when we say argument, it presents proof or evidences, but if does not, then that's merely an opinion. Arguments, class, is defined as a reason or the reasoning given for or against a matter under discussion. So compare evidence, proof, things like that. However, change can only be achieved if the reader fully understand the argument that is accompanied with evidences like reasoning or like reasons that the author is trying to emphasize. Okay. So, what are the steps in analyzing an argument? Of course, number one, you have to briefly note the main assertion. What does the writer want me to believe or do? And make a note of the first reason the author makes to support his or her conclusion. Three, write down every other reason. And four, you have to underline the most important reason. So these are the steps in analyzing an argument. Just briefly note the main assertion, make a note of the first reason, write down every other reason, and underline the most important reason. Okay, so that's the steps. Now let's talk about the example of manifesto and analysis of arguments. Okay, so what is the goal? For example, I'm going to read this one, and let's go and check uh, check what would be the argument about it. Okay, so the goal is, for example, this one: in adversity, the crisis has also brought out some of the best in our societies, from solidarity among neighbors to the bravery of health and other key workers in facing down risk to their own health to serve their communities, to countries working together to provide emergency relief or to research treatments and vaccines. The lockdown measures that have been necessary to control the spread of COVID 19 have slowed economic activity and disrupted lives, but have also given some glimpse of a possible brighter in some places. Pollution's level have dropped to such an extent that people have breathed clean air or have been seen blue skies and clean waters, or have been able to walk and cycle safely with their children for the first times in their life. The use of digital technology has accelerated new ways of working and connecting with each other, from reducing time spent commuting to more flexible ways of studying, to carrying out medical consultation remotely. to spending more time with our families. Opinion polls from around the world show that the people want to protect the environment and preserve the positive that have emerged from the crisis as we recover. Okay, so now let's take a look what does it mean. So the goal for that is the argument that the manifesto wanted to me to believe is that COVID-19 pandemic has brought about a positive effect. So now look at how I analyze this arguments. So COVID-19 pandemic has brought about positive effects. First reason the author makes to support his or her conclusion is found in the first sentence, where the author uses the reason as her example to prove her claim: solidarity among neighbors and bravery of health and other key workers to countries working together to provide emergency relief or to research treatment and vaccine. Number three, list of the other reason: pollution levels have dropped, where people have breathed fresh air, have seen blue skies and clean waters. B, reduce time spent commuting and flexible ways of studying because of digital connecting with each other. And C, spending a lot of time with families. D, raise awareness of environment conservation. Number four, if the argument has several different reasons, we select the most important reason to know the main argument. But you need to select the main reason, which this kind of argument will all reason for under a single main reason, which is the positive effect or impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Explanation for being a manifesto categorized under goal. The manifesto does not use obviously convincing words, rather it hides the intention of changing people's mind using a positive picture or situation. It shares the reader the goal or the picture of something that everyone will accept and appreciate, with the subtle purpose of making people believe the premise. It is different with world in the sense what it does not impose the goal. Remember or take note that a manifesto could be in this category if the goal something beautiful and acceptable to everyone. It shared the reader to them to appreciate and eventually to believe in the argument presented. So this is just an example of reading materials or like an argument, and then you have to follow the steps in analyzing an argument. Just like what I said, how you follow the steps in argument. So I'll give you the four reasons on how to do that. You have to briefly note the main assertion, make note of the first reason, then write down the other reason, and of course, highlighting or underline the most important reason. Okay. So now, what are the lists and rules? So management of people with COVID-19 on their contacts, like workers who are unwell or who develop symptoms consistent with COVID-19, should be urged to stay at home, self-isolate, and contact a medical professional or the local COVID-19 information line for advice on testing and referral. So where local community transmission is high and work continues, allow for a telemedicine consultation where available, or consider waiving the requirement for a medical note for workers who are sick so that they are may stay at home. So what is the manifesto of this? Remember, I told you the lists and rules of this. I mean, on the very beginning, which one of the goal, things like that. So lists and rules class is a manifesto containing set of rules for behaving within specific content or items to be achieved or tasks to be fulfilled. So what do you mean by that here? The manifesto simply indicates the argument about the ways to manage people infected with COVID-19 or their contracts. Simple as that. Okay, so all workers should be urged to self-monitor their health, possibly with the use of questionnaires, and take their body temperature regularly. Thermal screening at the workplace should be considered only in the context of combination of measures for prevention and control of COVID-19 at the workplace and along with risk communication. Standard operating procedures should be prepared to manage a person who becomes sick at the workplace and is suspected of having COVID-19, including placing the person in an isolation room, limiting the number of people in contact, using personal protective equipment, and performing follow-up cleaning and disinfection. It is important to contact the local health authorities and to keep attendance and meeting records in order to facilitate or undertake contact tracing. Now, the explanation on how it is a manifesto under lease and rules. The manifesto sets the rules, like the bulleted information on how to do things on a specific situations. So just like what put in here, I put it in the bullet just so you know, you can easily determine the list and rules of these arguments. Okay. Next, world. Now, therefore, I, Ferdinand E. Marcos, President of the Philippines, by virtue of the powers vested upon me by Article 7, Section 10, Paragraph 2 of the Constitution, do hereby place the entire Philippines as defined in Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution under martial law, um, and in my capacity as the Commander-in-Chief, do hereby command the armed forces of the Philippines to maintain law and order throughout the Philippines, prevent or suppress all forms of lawless violence, as well as any act of insurrection or rebellion, and to enforce obedience to all the laws and decrees, order, and regulations promulgated by me personally or upon by direction. So what do you mean by that? The main assertion that this manifesto is pointing at is that the declaration of martial law in the country, or also known as the Proclamation number 1081, series of 1972, simply because it is what the manifesto is all about. It is what the author envisions. Okay. So number two, the first reason that supports the assertion is that the one that follows immediately after the assertion in the case of this manifesto, it is the main law and order throughout the Philippines. So in addition, sabi na dito, I do hereby order that all persons presently detained as well as all the others who may thereafter be similarly determined for the crimes of insurrection or rebellion and all other crimes and offenses committed in the furtherance or on the occasions thereof or incident thereto or in connection therewith, for crimes against national security and the law of nations, crimes against public order, crimes involving usurpation of authority, rank, title, and improper use of names, uniforms, and insignia, crimes committed by public officers, and for such other crimes as well as enumerated in order that I shall subsequently promulgated, as well as the crime as a consequence of any violations of any decree, order, and regulations promulgated by me personally or promulgated upon by direction shall be kept under detention until otherwise ordered release by me or by my duly designated representative. So the other reasons mentioned are prevent or suppress all forms of lawless violence as well as any act of insurrection of rebellion, to enforce obedience to all the laws and decrees, orders, and regulations. These reasons can also be acknowledged as the vision of the future that the author declares that make this manifesto as an example under the category world, right? They are making a world for this under the list that I just mentioned. Note, it is only a manifesto under world if the declaration is done by an authority or an authorized group to do the declaration, and if it envision change in the future. So just like what I said earlier, the category for the world, it's like creating a new world, and what is the envision of the author of that to make it happen. So now, are the reasons very logical? Are they acceptable? Does it cater to the welfare of the public? Answering this question means that you were able to analyze the manifesto critically. You can now create your own stand on the issue at hand. Remember, class, that topic sentence is equal to the main argument. So for your asynchronous activity, we will be discussing, or I will be posting this one to your Google Classroom. So hopefully you learned something today. And if you have any question, just park that. Once we meet next meeting, then we'll be talk about it more. All right. So thank you for your time, and God bless. All right. Thank you. Bye bye.